We good?
Good.
We're good. Welcome to the September event for Newcastle Institute. Newcastle Institute was formed, it's hard to believe, isn't it, 2004. There's some people sitting here who have been here since the very beginning. And as a place where, as an opportunity to discuss and have conversations around public policy, where we don't adopt like a tabloid approach, which is just, fear and madness, and we get an opportunity to actually talk sensibly about a topic that is of interest to all of us here in the community. Newcastle, of course, has been a place of learning, of discovery for thousands of years, and I want to acknowledge the Worimi and the Awabakal peoples and their custodianship of our lovely piece of paradise for thousands of years. And I want to also acknowledge those people who continue to make Newcastle a place of discovery, a place of learning, a place of a wonderful place to live. And that's really important. Tonight is an interesting topic. You'll see up on the screen behind the data curtain. What do companies know about you? When you click on a website, what do they know? And what do they do with what they know? Our guest tonight is Jacob Moran, and it's an enormous pleasure to have you, Jacob. Jacob is a graduate from the University here of Newcastle. He has worked at a very creative and senior level with organisations like NIB, ANZ Bank, and in his own business, and also with government agencies as well, looking exactly at that issue about what information do organisations extract, what do they do with it, what are they allowed to do with it, and he's currently working on a major project about how do we stop another Medicare or an Optus breach. So that's interesting. It's good to see so many people here. And after Jacob has finished speaking, it's your turn to ask lots of really fascinating questions. And so we look forward to that. So I wonder, would you just join with me, please, and welcome Jacob Moran.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that kind welcome, Rob. So as Rob said, today I'm going to be talking about that. Well, seems to be working. How companies track you online and what importantly they do with that information.
Take this one down.
Take that one. All right. Yeah, of course. I heard that someone said I haven't changed. It's true. Hello, my name is Jacob Moran. I'm a digital analytics engineer with a passion for data governance. A weird thing to say that you have a passion for governance. I think if you asked that little boy there, who was roughly 6 at the time, what he wanted to do, it wouldn't have been data governance. He probably wanted to be Danny Badiris. Not like Danny Badiris, he wanted to be Danny Badiris. So definitely a change from when I was that old. As Rob said, I'm born and bred in Novocastrian. I went to University of Newcastle. I started my career at NIB, building a lot of the tracking that NIB has on their website and their app, some of which is still around today. I then moved to Sydney, worked for Woolworths on their ill-fated Masters brand, the Woolworths competitor to Bunnings. While I was there, it closed down. I then moved to Melbourne, worked on Bunnings UK, the Homebase rebrand. While I was there, Bunnings UK closed down as a project. So if you want to kill Bunnings, I'll go work behind the counter for a while, 6 months tops, and it'll be fair. I then worked for companies like Caltex, Toyota, Lexus, building their websites, tracking people, all those kind of things. And now, as Rob said, I work for ANZ Bank on their digital native offering called ANZ Plus. So, quick show of hands. Has anyone ever been to one of these websites? So Toyota, Bunnings, Lexus, NIB, Woolworths, Petstock. Great. Roughly 70% of the room. I have helped those brands track you online. That's what I do. We are not, as you may see us in the movies, like hackers in a bombed out warehouse somewhere, some 80s action movie. We're just like you. We swear we're not doing things for the wrong reasons. I'll go into what some of those reasons are later. So, we're going to be talking about three things tonight. What is online tracking? Why do companies do online tracking? And how they do it. And I'll do a practical example of a site that a lot of us would use semi-regularly, very casually, and what they do. Because it's quite interesting how these companies track it. So I guess, what is online tracking? To understand what is online tracking, and I apologise if you can't read that, we need to understand the evolution of tracking people online. So, Christmas 1990, Tim Berners-Lee sent the first website live. He launched us into the internet era. The first website was ironically about how to build a website, but that was in December 1990. Come 1993 to 1994, companies like Netscape, which was a big kind of pioneer in the early internet age, and Web Trends had gone, hey, we can track people doing this. We can track people when they go to websites using things like cookies, and cookies are just ways to store information on a browser like Chrome or Firefox or Edge or something like that. So it didn't take them long, 18 months tops after the first website to go, we can track people doing this. And that first use case was a cookie that literally just said, has this person been to this site before? It was a simple yes/no flag. So nothing too nefarious, it was just to see if people had been there before. But you can see it didn't take as long as in the industry to track people. 1996 rolls around and hit counters started to be a thing. So it was very, very cool in the late 90s to have like an odometer style page counter at the top of your website. And the way they worked was basically back-end servers. Every time there was a request to that server, they would have a little odometer that they would go up by one tick. So very, very unsophisticated at this point. Around 1997, a coding language called JavaScript became prevalent in the industry. Now, every website you've ever been to has three main coding languages. There's HTML, which takes care of the structure of the site, how the text and how things look. There's CSS, which takes care of the styling, so think colours and images and things like that. And they're very, very static kind of things. And then you've got JavaScript, and JavaScript is the dynamic, right? And it's the dynamic part of the site. It controls how you interact with it. If you use a form or something like that, they're all powered with JavaScript. Again, as an industry, we're in, hey, this is dynamic. We can start to use this somehow to track people. So again, we're in the 90s still, and we've been doing this a little bit. Ironically, that was about when that photo was taken of me in 1997. 2005 comes around. So the big end of town realised that they could use this. They could use this technology to track people and make money out of them. So Google enters the market, and they bought a company called Urchin and created Google Analytics. And to this day, Google Analytics is the most widely used tracking software across the industry. It's the industry standard. 80 to 90% of the websites you visit on a daily basis will have Google Analytics on them. It's all pretty basic to this point though, and then in 2012, GA3 was released, so Google Analytics 3. Why they went from 1 to 2 to skipped 2 and went straight to 3, I don't know. I'm not a marketing person. But what that did was, up until that point, we were able to track individual visits to a website. Not people, visits, sessions. In 2012, they radically changed the game, and for the first time we were able to track people across devices, across sessions, across days, all of those kind of things. We went from tracking visits to tracking users. And then the regulators finally caught up. In 2016 and 2018, regulators in Europe and in America started to go, hang on, okay, ease up guys, you're tracking too much stuff. We want privacy online. So they introduced things like GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, and that's an EU-based law that applies to all EU citizens. And that basically says, you know, hey, instead of just tracking everybody, you need to be mindful of people. And the way that manifests itself is, if you've ever been to a website and down the bottom they have a little banner that says, we track you with tracking, with cookies and things like that. Are you okay with that? That's GDPR. And what that was they went, as an industry, said, okay, up until this point, you've been doing implied consent. You come to my website, I track you. And they want you to go to explicit consent. And that's the difference. Around this time as well, Safari, which is built by Apple, and it's a browser, it's the default browser on all iPhones, all MacBooks and things like that, introduced a thing called ITP, Intelligent Tracking Prevention. And this basically limited the use of third parties of tracking people on their devices and on their browsers specifically. Now, cared about their users and all this stuff, but that unsurprisingly is not true. The reason they did this was at the time in 2016, and today Apple's biggest competitors in the market are Google, Facebook, people like that. And Google and Facebook overwhelmingly make a lot of their money from advertising. I think Google makes somewhere around 70 to 75% of their money from advertising, from Google searches. And the way you make advertising work more effectively is with data. So Apple really wasn't protecting your data, they were still tracking you, they just didn't want Google to do it as well. From 2020 to today, we've done a lot of stuff. We've kind of gone back to the future. We're kind of now going back to the way we used to track in the early 90s, servers, back-end logs, all of those kind of things. Obviously, it's a lot more sophisticated now, and we're doing things like machine learning and AI, which I'll talk a little bit about later. All right, so I covered two kind of concepts there. Back-end tracking and browser tracking. So what are they? So in general, companies will track you two ways. The first is client-side tracking. That's in the browser. So that's things like Chrome, Firefox, Edge. What does the browser know about you, right? And then there's server-side tracking. And server-side tracking is internal company logs that it's basically what does the company know about you. It's got nothing to do with what you do on the site, but it's more about what do they know about you because you're a customer of theirs. So let's talk a little bit about this. I won't go into too much detail here, but so client-side tracking, what they do on the browser, what you do on the browser. So in general, when you load a web page, it'll load the code of the site. Now, the software developers who have built the site will say, okay, our marketing team want to run ads on Facebook, they want to run ads on Google, they want to run ads on TikTok. So I'm going to load a little snippet of JavaScript, a little snippet of code that says, hey, Facebook, I want you to know information about my users. Right, so it all starts on the site. And that little beachhead piece of code will go out to the Facebook servers, the Google servers, and say basically, hey, come at me, come and track my user, have access, free reign. What's interesting about this is that it's a two-way communication piece. The server says, the website says, hey, come track me. Facebook says, cool, I'm going to track everything I want, thank you very much. There's no kind of stopping the tracker once it's on the site. Then there's server-side tracking. And what happens here is, again, the web page loads, but the developers have said, you know what, I don't necessarily want Facebook and Google to have free access to my users. But also I want to give these third-party trackers some information maybe the browser doesn't have. So I'm going to do this server side. So I'm going to load data from my internal server to the website, and then outside the website, I'm going to send information to TikTok, Facebook, Google, wherever I want, right? And this is very opaque. It's also very rich, this data. We don't know what it is, we can't see it. But also they're protecting me on their site because they're not just saying, and they're not just saying, hey TikTok, hey Facebook, come at my user, track whatever you want. Importantly, regardless of the method, data analysis, whether it be marketing or whatever the case may be, nearly always involves a third party. Always. No company is keeping is tracking you online and keeping all that data for themselves. It's not happening. So now that we've talked about the what, let's talk maybe a little bit about the why. Why do companies track you online? It might seem obvious, but I assure you it's not. Sometimes it can be quite complicated. So, in general, we have two types of analytics, two reasons to track people online. Product analytics and marketing analytics. So product analytics is probably what we don't think about a lot when we're thinking about tracking people online, but it's very much about the user experience on the site. How can I make my user's life better? So if I'm an e-commerce website and I'm selling shoes, and I'm looking at the checkout, and I notice that everyone drops off here because of some reason, I can use that information to improve my site. Right? Basic. Whereas marketing analytics is focused very much on all the above-the-line marketing that these companies do, measuring the effectiveness and also talking about remarketing to you. In general, product analytics is about the website, marketing analytics is about the person. So let's use an example to figure this out. So this is a website article from the Herald from Monday, and you can see different information here. What's interesting is that product analytics and marketing analytics generally want the same data to answer different questions. So let's have a look at this. So product analytics on this page would be interested in things like the author, the category of the article, is it a sport article, is it a local government article, what do my users care about? It'll look at things like time on page, whether people scroll all the way to the bottom, the sentiment of the comments, is this user a frequent user, because obviously that's going to change the way they use the site. So that's kind of that. Whereas marketing analytics will be like, okay, were any ads served, and there's an ad data bottom here for NBN code. Was the user a subscriber? Could we remarket to them to make them a subscriber? And how did the user come to the site? So what's interesting is they actually use a lot of the same kind of signals, a lot of the same data to answer those questions. There's an interesting idea when we talk about why we track people online, which is personalization versus privacy. At one end of the spectrum, we have completely private browsing. At this end of the spectrum, the company knows nothing about you, the browser knows nothing about you, nothing is stored, right? That might sound good, but it's definitely got problems. And at the other end, we've got complete personalisation. And that might be, I open up the Herald website, it says, hey, Jacob, looking handsome today. There's a big picture of me that's gone through the webcam. And it's like, here's all the articles that we know you're interested in. And here's a bunch of ads that are very, very tailored to you. So they're kind of the extremes. Most people would say, well, can't we have both? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. And I would argue that we don't want both. I would argue that every company needs to figure out where they sit on the spectrum, and they need to understand the implications of what they're doing. And the reason I say you need to understand where you sit on the spectrum is complete privacy might sound good, but it's not. The way advertising works and the way improving your user experience on a website works is through personalisation. For example, if we talk about ads, for example, when I'm a marketer and I want to send you an ad, I need to know things about you so I can probably send you the right ads. I don't think anyone in this room would argue that sending ads to teenage boys about Viagra would be a good idea, right? So I need to know demographic information about the people I'm serving to, because that's what would happen if we had complete privacy. We would be just advertisers. We'd still send ads because that's what they do, they're advertisers. But they would have no idea who they're serving them to. So again, every company needs to figure out where they sit on this spectrum. All right. And we're back. We've talked about the what, we've talked about the why. Let's talk about the how. So I'm going to go through an example here of how a company that a lot of business rentals use on a semi-regular basis, how they, it's not Hitachi, I swear. Hold, please. fascinating. I'll just spell a few myths for you. I did have these at the end of my slide deck, but I can talk about them now. One question I get asked a lot when I do this kind of talk is Facebook listening to me? I had a conversation yesterday. I want to know if they're listening to me. The answer is most probably not. And the reason for that is, this is the best HDMI cord in the world. Looks like the internet from the 90s. Anyway, so is Facebook tracking me? The answer is listening to me. The answer is probably not. The reason for that, and you'll kind of see this in the next few slides, is in terms of everything Facebook knows about you, right? Comparative to all the other signals they have about you going through on their app, on websites, conversation is a weak signal of your intent to buy. They know what ads you've looked at, they know what ads you've clicked on, they know what you've scrolled on websites. They don't need to listen to you. The second reason is ethical. If this was actually happening, it would be a big ethical problem for these companies. They're big companies, it would get out. Google employs hundreds of thousands of people, Facebook as well. And the third reason is far more practical. Is that audio files are large. They're expensive to store and they're expensive to analyze at scale, right? So you combine that together. Ethically, it's a bit dodgy and they know that. They've got better signals and better indicators of what you're actually after. And then thirdly, it's expensive. These companies want to make money. It's probably not happening. They've done research papers and people have kind of debunked this, and Facebook have definitely thought about doing it, but there's no indication that they're doing it at scale. And what's actually probably happening, these researchers think, is that it's a bit of a confirmation bias, a bit of a correlation bias. You were having a conversation yesterday, it's front and centre of your mind. So you're thinking, okay, I'm really interested in garden hoses. You scroll past 19 ads that you have not seen, not paid attention to, then you get one that's for garden hoses, and okay, they're listening to me. It's probably not happening. I know I can be snubby. Alright. Let's talk a little about realestate.com, one of my favourite websites to go to for a number of reasons. So, let's do a little scenario here. So, step one, the ad. You're on your phone and you see a realestate.com.au post on Facebook. Looks like that. Nice little 3-bed, 2-bath in North Ryde. You think, yeah, North Ryde. I'm done living in Newcastle. I want to live close to Macquarie Uni or whatever's out there. I don't know. Why you want to leave Newcastle? I don't know, but maybe you do. You go, okay, I'm gonna engage with this ad on Facebook. Step 2, the click. You click on the post, and you're taken to this URL here. So it might be a bit hard for you to read, so I apologise. But let's break down the URL a bit. So firstly, you've got the domain, realestate.com.au. That's the domain, that makes sense. Then you've got property, duplex, semi-detached. Okay, that's category information about the property, nothing too interesting. Then you've got New South Wales, North Ryde. Okay, state, suburb, that all makes sense. Then you've got 14582999490. What's that? From context, and spoiler alert, I've looked it up, that's a property ID. So that identifies that particular property. So nothing nefarious, right? They're not doing anything nefarious here. If only that was the entire URL. That's the entire URL. Don't worry about reading it. I'm going to show it on the next screen. What is that? That's a query string. And you can see them in any URL you click from Facebook or anywhere, any kind of site. What is a query string? Query string is how two web pages, two websites communicate with each other. And there are plenty of non-nefarious reasons query strings exist. Let's say you're on MyGov and you want to go to the ATO port or something like that. MyGov in the query string will say, hey, ATO, don't worry about authenticating this person. We've already done it. You don't need them to log in. And you want to go into a form on the ATO website. And they'll say, hey, we know this information about this person, pre-fill the form. So there are lots of reasons that query strings exist. But if we learn anything from the evolution of tracking from before, where there's a dollar to be made, analytics people like myself will figure out a way to exploit good intentioned web developers. So let's break down that query string a little bit. Alright, this is it, blown up. The devil is in the query string, ladies and gentlemen. So what this is here are all the individual kind of keys and the values that they passed across. Now, what they're doing here is passing information about the advertising campaign that they're doing, right? So they can look to see how to better remarket to you, what's useful, those kind of things. So they've all got campaign in them all except for the last one. Campaign, the reason for that is realestate.com, some of you may know, is owned by a corporation called REA. REA owns realestate.com, they own Flatmates, they own Real Commercial, Mortgage Choice, and Campaign Agent. And Campaign Agent is the interesting one. When you actually Google REA, the corporation, they don't say they're a property company or a real estate company. They're a digital advertising company. No different to Facebook, no different to Google. They make their money through advertising. And Campaign is Campaign Agent. It's the thing they use to kind of identify their own campaigns. So let's see what they're actually sending to these particular pages. So we've got campaign type equals external. Okay, so they have a group of websites, but they also advertise on websites that aren't their own. So I came from Facebook, I'm external. That makes sense. Campaign channel, customer product, okay. That's just, guess what, some real estate agent bought this particular ad. So that's a customer product, that makes sense. Campaign source, Facebook, I came from Facebook, that makes sense. Campaign name equals Resi and Max. Resi would be internal naming indicator, Max would be the bidding strategy. So I'm obviously a dedicated realestate.com looker. So Max is the bidding strategy. They want to outpay everybody for my click. Right? And the way these advertisers work is every time you type something to Google or you're on Facebook, there's a mini auction that's held. And all the advertisers say, I'm willing to pay $1.50 for this click. I'm willing to pay $10 for this click. If you get into like wedding photography, some of those clicks are, if you click on a wedding photographer, some of them are like $30, $40 for one click. They're making money out of it though. Campaign content, listing ID equals, oh, that's the number we saw before. Cool, that's a property ID. Okay, nothing nefarious there. Campaign booking ID. Remember how I said that REA makes money out of advertising? What they've built is their own campaign agent is a media buyer. So basically people go in and say, hey, I want to have this campaign, I'm willing to buy this many slots. And that's the booking ID that identifies that to the campaign agent. And then we have the by far scariest part of this query string. FBCLID. FBCLID stands for Facebook Click Identifier. And Google has their own one as well, it's called GCLID. They all have their own. But what is that? That's a random identifier that identifies that particular click on Facebook. Right? That particular click. And in Facebook, they're saying, okay, Facebook click ID, but I also know because they're on my platform that was Jaden Moran. So I can now track every single click he does, and I can give that information out to other websites. Terrifying. Alright, but that's not it. The page loads. But it's not all bedrooms and real estate agent buzzwords. As we know, there's a bunch of tracking about to be loaded. Let's look at what it is. So the website loads, and this is all the client-side tracking that we were talking about before. What do they load when the page loads? Okay, so they load a thing called Braze, which is a customer engagement engine. What's kind of cool about a lot of these websites now is they're moving towards what they call decisioning engines, which basically they give all of your data and they say, hey, machine learning model, figure out the next best action for this person. And that's what Braze is. So that might be send a push notification, advertise to them on Facebook, send them an email. I don't believe that to you, fancy algorithm I don't really understand. That's what Braze is. They load the Facebook Pixel ID, funnily enough. Facebook's going to be involved here somewhere. Adobe Analytics. Adobe Analytics is a product analytic tool that tracks sessions, it tracks page views, all that kind of stuff, but it also integrates with most of those. Snowplow Analytics. Snowplow Analytics is for geeks like me who like to do data engineering things. It's kind of like Adobe Analytics, though. It's kind of like a double up. Oracle Moat Heat Mapping. This is terrifying. So this is every time you load a page in REA, they are loading heat mapping tools that will look where your cursor goes, what you click on, where you look, where you stop, all those kind of things. Every single time. Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is a way. Google Tag Manager is a way to for marketing people who don't know how to code to add more analytics to the site. It probably loaded half of this stuff, but without knowing any code, you can load as many things as you want. It's terrifying how quickly I can track you. Optimizely. Optimizely is an A/B testing tool. What is an A/B testing tool? The easiest way to explain this is, let's say you have an e-commerce website and it has a big red button that says buy now. And your CEO comes in and says, I think that buy now button should be green and it should say purchase. A/B test, what you could do is you use a tool like Optimizely to serve up different options of the website to different users and then decide which one is actually the better version, right? So it's kind of doing multivariate testing. Google Analytics. Oh my God, it's the same as Adobe Analytics. Why have they got both? Because they can. It's doing exactly the same thing. It's doing very, very similar things to Facebook, very, very similar things to Snowplow. They're all tracking you with different copies of data. And then you've got Campaign Agent, which is REA's own version of Google Analytics, Snowplow Analytics, right? So not only are they sending it to third parties, they're keeping it themselves. And then we have the internal server logs. What are they doing in there on the server-side tracking? We have no idea. They could be doing anything. But as you can see, lots and lots of copies of your data, lots and lots of different ways they're tracking you. So this is all nice, I hear you say, but give us some details. What does Meta, for example, track? And I'm going to go into a bit of a demo here, but what I want you to understand is I'm just showing you Meta and Facebook, but Google Analytics does this. Adobe Analytics, they're all doing the same thing. So I don't think that Facebook is necessarily evil comparative to the others, because it's not. Alright, this is the page here, and ironically between the time in an indicator of the market, in the time that I found this ad on Facebook the other day, and today, this property sold. So good work to the agents. The boosting campaigns on Facebook must have worked. So what I've got open here, don't stress too much, is the network tab. And this is basically just showing us requests to and from the website for different information, right? And what I've loaded here is a Facebook ID. So that's all I'm doing here, just showing you the calls that they've sent to Facebook. So what are they doing? So first things first, this is that beachhead piece of code I was talking about. This isn't doing anything apart from saying, hey, Facebook, come at me, track my user. Then we have this, and what this is here, and by the way, this is how it manifests itself to Facebook, but this is a bit easier to read, so we'll read this here. This is the information that it sends. So when the page loads, every analytical tool will send a page view tag, and all this does is say, hey, this user or someone loaded a page. I thought you should know. Facebook says thank you very much, but what do they actually send? So we've got an event name that identifies that it's a page view. Fantastic. We've got DL, which is document location, which is just the URL. Fantastic. We've got some information about where it came from. I was referred from Google. We've got a timestamp. We've got screen resolutions. You know, pretty basic stuff that isn't that nefarious. Got some information about the pixel. And then, what's this? FBP and FBC. What are these? So, FBC and FBP are Facebook cookies. And cookies are set on every site you go to. They're used for many non-nefarious reasons, but Facebook sets them to track you across sessions. And this is then manifested in the cookie, but the important thing I want you to see here, might be a bit too small, is that these cookies don't expire until December. Right? So they will be on every single time I go to realestate.com between now and December, that cookie will be there. And on every single event I do, we'll be sending this data. So what is it? FBC. So It's got some identifiers, it's got a timestamp, and then it's got, oh, hang on, that's the Facebook Click ID. So every single time I load the page for the next 3 months, that Facebook Click ID, that initial Facebook Click ID that I did, is going to be sent to Facebook for every single event, for every single page I load, for every single time I scroll. Hey, that event was related to this click. FBP, if that's not scary enough, FBP will really scare you. FBP has the same identifiers, but then it's got this number here, 566266138, blah, blah, blah. What is that? That's me. That's Facebook's identifier for me on the realestate.com website. You'd have one too. It's a randomly generated number, but somewhere on the Facebook server they would have, alright, Jake Moran on the realestate.com website, he is 566 blah blah blah. On the domain website, he's 9213. And here are all the click ID that he's got for those websites. As you can see, they're building more and more information about it. And then they send another event on properties specifically. They send an event called the View Content event. Now, View Content events, every analytical tool have one of these. Basically, they're just saying, hey, this is an important piece of content. Right, so on realestate.com, this would be on properties. On the Sydney Morning Herald, it would be on articles. On an e-commerce website, it would be on the product page. And it's got a bit more information than the old page view tag. Now I'm going to scroll past some of these and come back to them in a second. So as you can see, they've got FBC and FBP, don't worry. They know who I am, they know which click it is. Fantastic. Everyone's happy. Well, Facebook's happy at least. But let's scroll up and have a look at some of these here. So they've got some information about the property. They've got postcode, suburb, region, state, right? But these things might look about the property, but it's actually about my interests. Okay, so I'm interested in things in the Upper North Shore. I'm interested in 2 beds, 3 baths, all these kind of things. Scary, right? And then down here, we've got some more information that REA wanted to tell Facebook about me. They've got that I'm a member, a segment ID. So think of these as audiences, cohorts, groups, whatever you want to call them, that they've calculated on their internal servers that they want to tell Facebook about. So they've said, hey, Jake Moran's a member of REA Group Main 301, REA Group Main 327. What are these groups? We don't know. Facebook doesn't know either. Ironically, when I started putting the slides together for this, I was already a member of 301, so I'd say that that's kind of the long-lived audience, but I only became a member of 327 yesterday, so I dare say that's a high-propensity, high-traffic user, so they're probably going to stand the hell out of me on Facebook and Google Ads for the next couple of weeks. And then moving up, we've got this information, some information here that looks like random strings and has random things like Johannesburg and Sydney and London and Basel. What the hell is that? Well, firstly, those values there are what we call encrypted. So it is considered very, very bad practice to send personally identifiable information in plain text over the internet. It's the number one way hackers will get your information. So Facebook and Google and these places say, please don't send us first name equals Jacob, last name equals Moran. Please don't do that. Someone will have your data on some black market website very, very quickly. Send us an encrypted version of their name. And if we have a key, we can decrypt it. But without that, we don't. So realestate.com is obliging, and they're sending all of this personal identifiable information encrypted. So Johannesburg might be first name, London might be last name, Basel might be the name of my pet. It's Karen, by the way. But we don't know what it is. But what's cool about this actually is that REA is taking it a step further. So instead of saying, okay, first name equals random string, last name equals random string, they're renaming these events. So they're saying type A. This is going badly if I can't get that. But anyway, they're saying, okay, I don't want you to know, I guess, who what this actual identifier is, but I want you to have it so you can do all your nasty little remarketing with it. Yeah, I'm nearly at the end anyway. Yeah, sure. Should you can. Oh, look, there's only a few slides left, so I just talk. Yeah. So Let's put it all together. The ad on Facebook, the URL, the query string that tells the website and tells the Facebook trackers that are loaded what the click is. The fact that that information then goes back to Facebook and in turn all those different analytical tools. So what do they do with that information? Well, quite clearly they use it to remarket and advertise and measure effectiveness of campaigns, obviously. But what I think is more interesting is who owns that data? So once this data goes to Google Analytics, once it goes to Facebook, once it goes to TikTok, it is no longer the domain of the company. They don't own that data anymore. The advertiser owns that data. What do they do with that data? They sell it to advertisers, right? And how do they sell it to advertisers? So let's say that I'm realestate.com and I want to do remarketing for anyone who's been to my site in the last, kind of 2 months. Easy, right? They've got my data. So I say, create a campaign for that. And then, but I'm not sort of interested in just my people. I want to know people who've got the same traits as me, as my users. People who look like my users. And Facebook goes, yeah, that's not a problem because I've got, not only do I have the tracking on this site, and I know that you're a real estate site and all those kind of things, but I also have tracking on, free tracking on domain. I have it on the individual real estate agents' websites. I know all of these people who haven't been to your site are also interested in buying a property or whatever the case may be. So they go, cool, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but here's a cohort of 100,000 people who look like your audience. You want to advertise to them too? Great, thank you very much. In general, Facebook won't say to advertisers, do you want to advertise to Jackie Moran? They'll say, do you want to advertise to a cohort of people? Now, and I'll tell you things about that cohort. They might be, 30% of them might be 18 to 25 years old or whatever the case may be, but I'm not going to tell you who they are. But what's interesting is that Facebook has that information. And they have everything that you did on the app, and they have everything that you did on all the websites you visit. Right? And you can see how that ecosystem, that massive web of data is being used. And funnily enough, all of these machine learning tools and all these AI tools need lots of data. And because they provide, like Facebook and Google and TikTok and all these places have, this is free. These companies don't pay for this tracking because we're providing data to them to train their models and make their advertising algorithm better. And that's kind of how it works. Oh, that's fine. I do have some frequently asked questions. Obviously, I went through the... It's all right. It's all right. So obviously I went through the is Facebook listening to you, and hopefully that makes a bit more sense why I don't think they are. They don't need to. It's expensive, and it's weak comparative to what you're doing on the app and every website you've ever visited. The next question I had was, a lot of people ask is, I use ad blockers and private browsing and all these kind of things. Can you still track me? Oh yeah, very, very easily. It's not hard at all. Within about half an hour, if you know what you're doing, you can have a website sending data to multiple places, getting around ad blockers, all of those kind of things. It's frighteningly easy because it's frighteningly a lot of money to be made. So places like Google and Facebook have made it very easy. Question I get asked a bit is, will the new privacy laws that are coming into effect, for those who don't know, there's privacy laws in front of the Parliament at the moment. There's a draft bill out of a Senate inquiry. Will they hinder advertisers? Yes, they will. But it really does depend on how big the fines are. So the GDPR in Europe, which is basically what we're copying our privacy laws off, the reason it was so successful at hindering advertisers in the European Union was because of the eye-watering amounts the fines were. So up to 20 million euros and all of these kind of things. So yeah, it makes sense for advertisers to get involved. And he's given up. It's okay. But realistically, it's not going to hurt the big end of town. Your REAs, realestate.coms, they've already got ways around this. And more importantly, they've got consultants and agencies who have worked with European clients since 2016. They know what they're doing. They know how to get around it. in a completely legal way. Where does all this data live? All this data sent to third parties, where does it live? This is the potentially the frightening part about this. Data sovereignty is a massive issue in Australia. In places like government, finance, and healthcare, we have very, very strict data sovereignty laws that say this data cannot leave Australian shores. It can't go offshore for processing. We don't have that so much with all of these tools, right? And they are very tight-lipped on what they do with the data and where they send it. But the reality is the Australian data centres, and they all have data centres in Australia, so Google has one in southwest Sydney and down in Port Melbourne. Facebook has one in similar places. The data centres in Australia for these advertisers are backwaters. They're not, in terms of the tooling, the solutions they've got on them, they're nowhere near as good as the American counterpart. So realistically, the trained data, they're sending it to America. So that was the frequently asked questions I had. Do I open it up for questions now, Rob, or anyone who's?
Yeah, absolutely. It's your turn to ask questions. If you've got a question, just yell out, and Robin's got a microphone. She'll bring it round to you. Thanks, Jeff.
It says unsubscribe in a lot of the things. Does that make a difference, or once you're in, you're in? If they say to watch this website, you've got to look at the cookie and you've got to agree with the cookies. If you choose not to click on cookies, that means you can't watch the website, but does that protect you? And finally, how do we protect ourselves from AI?
Yeah, okay, cool. A bit in that question. If they have a cookie banner, generally hitting no will protect you in some ways. They won't be able to store cookies on your device. They'll still know, and it really depends on the practitioners. Some people have the best intentions, but these tools, as you can see, they're pervasive and they're getting to different places. So if they're doing the right thing, yes, opting out of tracking will mean that they won't send your information to Google Analytics, they won't send it to Facebook, but they can still track you through the company site and do informative things with that, depending on what their privacy policy says. I think that sometimes the scary thing is that the practitioners of these websites don't know what these trackers are doing. I had a picture on one of the slides where there was one man walking along a horizon and then there was a bunch of people following him in the distance. And that's kind of the analogy I like to give here. It's very much a daisy chain, and if there's one tracker getting in, it'll load other trackers. And so if they're doing the right thing, yes, but that's not always the case. And not for any nefarious reason, just because it's quite hard sometimes. How do you protect yourself from AI? Well, that's an interesting one. AI, like any kind of machine learning, requires lots and lots of data. And I'd say a lot of the time that data's already out there. A lot of companies are aware of this, and they're kind of taking a server-side approach to AI in that they'll host their own models, so your data won't leave their kind of premises. But there's a lot of useful use cases for AI. I know for a fact that NRMA, for example, are using AI to assess claims quicker based off things they know about you and about the accident and things like that. So there are use cases where AI is useful, but there in general is no anonymous traffic online. We can track you.
Thanks very much for your talk, which was pretty scary. Two questions. Is this the sort of stuff that Facebook or Meta sold to Cambridge Analytica to allow political advertising to be targeted in the 2016 US election?
Yes.
And secondly, I thought that might be the answer. Secondly, is this sort of stuff accumulating on the dark web so that scammers can better target you as well?
The answer is yes to both. So Cambridge Analytica got in through some. They exploited makes it sound like it was a hack. It wasn't a hack, but there was some lax laws around the way data was shared and some bad decisions made at Meta. Because they're amassing this data, I can understand how it happened, but yes, this is the kind of data they shared. So they shared a lot of click data, which has a lot of signals about you, and obviously those event payloads that I showed you before have a lot of information about you. Sorry, what was the second question was? Is it accumulating on the dark web? In general, no. Not all of it. There's definitely, mentions of everyone in this room on the dark web. If you have a VPN or an antivirus, they will usually offer dark web scanning and kind of tell you where your information is turned up, and that's quite useful. But companies like Facebook and Google are generally trying to protect their data. They don't want to tick it out because they know the brand reputation it'll hit. So they're not doing it deliberately, but as you can see, there's masses of these tools. And one of the things that was interesting about, I think it was Optus, the Optus breach was that it was a single point of failure. Someone had too much permission and that particular account was exploited for all this data, and that's the issue we're going to have. Right, the bad actor scenario here is quite large and quite profitable.
Hey, thank you for your talk this evening. I just wanted to ask a question for fun, or maybe the other way around. If you, as a data analyzer, if you were to build a website for tonight and got us all to click on it, what was some of the scarier things that you could sort of take from that using these tools?
Yeah, I mean, straight away, these tools like Facebook and Google Analytics both track 100 different points of information about you. Probably the scariest thing is your IP and everything that I know, or we can device fingerprint you. So what that means is we can put together a bunch of information about you that will uniquely identify you no matter what you do. So the example is, say, private browsing, or incognito browsing, whatever it is. If you go to the same site, on the same device, on the same screen resolutions, all those kind of things, from the same IP, you can quickly say, I don't know their name, but I know exactly who this person is. And then what you can do is, or I guess what's really scary, I didn't really talk about this, is that random Facebook identifier, and they all have it, is that will be anonymous until you log in once, until you slip up once and you put your email address into one form, and then I've captured you and I can daisy chain all of those events together very, very easily and say, okay, you identified yourself today, but you've been to the site 15 times in the last 2 years. I've got that information, thank you very much. So yeah, very easily too, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much for scaring the hell out of us all. Can you tell me what the dark web is? Because I really don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The dark web it's just like the internet, except it's not really accessible by search engines. So basically, instead of having useful URLs, like, so every URL that you go to, like www.realestate.com.au, is actually then transferred into an IP address that is the actual location of that website. And so the dark web, and you can generally only access it through certain browsers and certain routers and things like that, but it's just like that. You just have to know exactly what, you have to know the exact address you're going to, you might have to have some credentials to log you in, and there it is. So it's not different to the internet, apart from it works exactly the same way, except you just can't Google it and find it effectively. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thanks for your talk, it was very interesting. I'm just wondering how concerned we should be about small business and clubs and things like that tell us that they have to collect certain things from us, and you ask what they're going to do with it, and they don't know what they're going to do with it. How concerned should we be about that
Yeah.
casual data collection?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would be vigilant, but not paranoid. So in general, people have good intentions, and as I said, it's not actually them that will be exploiting your data, but it's the third parties that might be taking it. Now, for third parties like Facebook and Google, there's no real problem because they have a vested interest in keeping your data close and secure. But the ones I would be worried about are the ones that are making you fill out Excel forms and things like that have no control. If they're using recognised tools, there's a good chance that those tools have been bought and paid for because they take these things rather seriously. Again, we don't know how people are accessing data on the other end, so a lot of, I can guarantee you Souse to their check-in system would have one login. It would be admin@Souse, and the password would be password. Obviously, that's a lot more concerning, right? So the big end of town aren't doing that, right? One way to kind of safeguard and figure out where leaks happen, and I think, Rob, this was talked about last time, was creating aliases for every single kind of club and thing you sign up for. So it might be as simple as Jacob plus South Newcastle at gmail.com. So yeah, it's definitely things you can do, and then if you get emails or that turns up on the dark web or whatever it is, you can see, okay, so South leaks my data. I now know how it came to pass.
Do you want to talk about the Commonwealth Government's digital ID thing? The speaker last month talked about digital ID and how that will protect you in cases like this.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is definitely fascinating, and I would trust the interesting thing about digital IDs is that they are much better if you are using Service New South Wales or whatever, because you are communicating entirely with Service New South Wales or the government identifiers, and the club doesn't get your information, right? And that's quite pivotal because there's one less place your information is, right? So they're great tools, and the government is not tracking you. Anyone who's worked in government will know that they have neither the time nor the resources to do that effectively. But instead of sending all of your information 17 times to different people, you're basically saying, okay, the government will know who I am, and then they'll send aliases and identifiers to the clubs that the only the information they need to check me in or whatever it is. So that's quite useful. And a big fan.
Thank you very much for your time and your expertise. I'm a Facebook tragedy. What can I do, or is it too late now to save myself? I have been sacrificed.
It's never too late. It's too late on the Facebook platform because obviously they're tracking everything. They're tracking all your scrolls, all your clicks, all of those things, right? But that's personalisation. They're going to give you better ads and things like that. What you can do on websites is make sure you're clearing your cookies quite frequently. If you really want to get aggressive with it, every time you can copy a URL instead of clicking on an ad, you can paste it into your browser and get rid of all that query string information, all that kind of stuff. I honestly think it's more hassle than it's worth. I would just live with the fact that they are hopefully making your life slightly better. And when they do listen to you in the future, that they're serving you better ads. Short of asking them to delete your data, which you can do, Facebook and you can do it with Google, but it's very, very hard for them to actually know what they've done properly for a number of reasons. There's not much you can do. It's kind of up to you how you want to play it.
I'll just grab the microphone for you.
Sorry for scaring everybody.
Just don't be interested, just have nothing to
Yeah, they'll lose interest in you if you don't buy anything, that's for sure.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
This is probably a naive question, but I get a bit bamboozled by whether to upload an app or whether to go directly to the website. And they're always, everyone's always pressing you to download the app and use the app. is the app actually safer or not?
So are apps safer than, I guess, using the site? Yes, they're safer in that it's a direct connection to the, general app analytics is a long way behind website analytics, and generally the way app analytics works, instead of loading all those trackers, because apps like to be small and compressed and not use a lot of battery and all those kind of things, generally they'll do more server-side tracking, i.e. from their internal servers off to Facebook and stuff like that. So in terms of protecting yourself, apps are probably better. In terms of I guess, speed and convenience, that's kind of up to you how often you use something as to whether it's worth it. But generally, apps are, because it is a personalised experience for your phone, the companies are probably doing a better job.
Thanks for your presentation tonight, very insightful. I was just wondering in terms of the global context, are there safer countries to browse through? Like we all can't afford .com, and obviously there's other nations that you can browse through. Is there heightened or reduced danger with that?
Yeah, so I guess the question, if I understand it, is about like if you use a VPN, you can change where you're browsing through. Is that the question, or is it?
But also just using what you do using a .com email as opposed to using an Australian.
Yeah, I guess the .com and .au is kind of neither here nor there. It's kind of the same about whether, like, generally .au kind of email addresses will be, they'll have a lot of their data centers in Australia, whereas the .com ones, wherever they feel like. In general, it's not possible, but that is true. In terms of browsing through other sites, so what this browsing through other countries, what this question is, you can use things to basically route your information through different countries, kind of protect your identity online. It also gives you a different Netflix and Stan if that's something you're interested in. Generally, browsing through European Union countries or the state of California is going to be your best bet. The reason is they have the most aggressive privacy laws. So they're generally going to protect you better. But hopefully come this time next year, Australia will have very, very similar laws. Again, it all comes down to how well they're being enforced.
There's a question over here. I googled the other day about tyres for the car, and I've been swamped with ads. Is there a way you can stop it?
Don't buy anything. Don't buy anything is generally the advice. When you say swamp with ads on Google, Facebook, yep. No, you'll just have to cycle out of it. I mean, you can go and say delete me forever, or you can manage like your marketing communications and things like that. But once you're in the cohort of tyre lovers, generally I think tyres, so there's this idea of time to purchase, which advertisers use all the time, that sells the different, I guess, the arcs of purchasing, right? So buying a house or getting a bank loan or something like that, they might keep advertising to you for months and months and months and months. I had a real estate agent call me the other day, 4 years after I bought a house. But generally, like things like tyres, and things like flowers and stuff like that, there's obviously a lot shorter of an arc, right? So I don't think in 2 weeks you'll have those tyre ads, because otherwise you've been running around on rims, and I think that's bad.
Announce that you sold the car.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You're always great when we get a chance to come along to them. Any of us with kids will tell us, we use Google as a web browser, we're crazy, and they always recommend a different type, like DuckDuckGo or whatever. I mean, what one do you use?
I use Google, and I don't use private browsing. I accept my fate. Browsers, so search engines exist, other search engines exist, like Bing and DuckDuckGo and things like that aren't in, I guess, you don't have to Google everything. DuckDuckGo is billed as the privacy search engine, and what they theoretically do is they'll have the searches, and you search something and they won't keep any information about you that they'll then sell to advertisers. It's definitely a good idea, but their search engines aren't as good, funnily enough. So it's kind of like a personalisation versus privacy argument in itself. In that I tried to go off grid a little bit and use a browser called Vivaldi, and I tried to use Bing and DuckDuckGo, and I eventually found myself just frustrated with having to go to the 4th or 5th page of the search index to find what I wanted. So I went back to Google, and I just accept my fate.
Okay, thank you.
I looked on Qantas.com the other day for airfares in response to a sale.
Massive mistake.
I didn't log in, so I'm a member and I didn't log in. And I saw an airfare and I thought, that's not too bad. And then the next day, so I got out of it. The next day I had a look, and it was like same flight, same day, $500 dear or something like that. So then I thought, I'll clear my history, thinking that might work this time, so that wouldn't know I'd looked before. So I went on the next day again and looked at the same airfares, and it was back to the original cheaper price. Was I just lucky, or does that work deleting the history? Because it deletes every history, so it's a pain to go to other websites as well.
Well, that's true. I have some friends who work at Qantas, and I have heard them, and don't quote me on this, because it's definitely not my area of expertise, but I have heard that they have, their pricing engine does take into account that kind of stuff. It's very much about your propensity to buy, right? And so I use the example of NRMA has a traffic light system about what price it gives you for home and contents and car insurance. If you're a green customer, you'll get the lowest price. If you're an amber customer, you'll get a middle price. If you're a red customer, they don't want to keep you, so they're going to give you the worst price. It's a very similar thing to Qantas. Qantas do exactly the same thing. Aggressive pricing engines.
So would a solution to that be search the local library, but then come home and buy it?
That could be one. It could be one way, but you never know. You might be changing yourself from a yellow customer to a red customer, and they will think I don't know how their algorithms work.
I can tell you how to solve that. Get your husband's phone and book the airfare.
It's an interesting point. Like these models, the thing that they don't tell you about AI and machine learning is that even the people who create these models don't really understand how they work. It's a black box to them. They can say, these are the vague indicators that we wanted to look at. But how it came up with a particular recommendation, they don't know. So I work with a team at ANZ who is doing expense prediction. A very useful feature. It basically says, okay, based off what you've done before, I think you're about to have a Medibank bill. Quite simple. But we'll routinely go, okay, why did it come up with this particular expense? And I go, well, I don't really know. It's a bit of a black box. So when it comes to things like gender, if they put it as an indicator, it could definitely give you different results. Which is, sexism in AI isn't a new thing, unfortunately.
Well, I think that brings us to a close tonight, now that you've scared us and we're all going to go and look at our computers and our phones in a different way. Or we just accept that, as you said, accept your fate and use the benefits of technology that have been wonderful. You think about, I can remember in the 90s having to dial up, that sound that it made when you dialed up the internet. And then it would only last for 4 hours or something, or 3 hours, and then you'd have to do it all again. So,
I never got to use it at that time. My mother always wanted to use the phone.
So thank you. It's been really helpful, at least from my perspective, to know what's going on and perhaps to be alert and careful about it. I didn't get the Qantas flight, by the way, but I was pleased that maybe clearing the history could have worked. Maybe. So please join me in thanking David So I just wanted to talk about the next 2 months. So October, we're having a session on the sustainability of the two-party political system in Australia. Now, some of you may have seen Nikki Savva's article in the Sydney Morning Herald at the weekend. She's stolen our thunder a little bit, but we've been organising this for months. So we have got Simon Holmes Court, who funded the Teals coming. We've got Cos Samaras, who is a sort of pollster, data analyst around politics. You may have seen him on some of the election results, really informative guy. And we've got Cheryl Curnow, who, as you know, was involved in the Democrats, a third-party political, so it'd be interesting to get her perspective. So we're having a panel discussion on that sustainability of the two-party political system. We acknowledge there are more than two parties, but the major parties are Liberal and Labor. This is a phenomenon not just in Australia. If you looked at the results of the British election earlier this year, while Labor won and won convincingly, you also saw the results. We also saw the results of the other parties. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion with some people that have got real runs on the ground, looking at both the data and experience in terms of having alternatives to the two-party political system. And in November, for those who have been around as long as me, we have our life member Michael Ondarchi coming. And yes, I can know some people. So Michael is Professor of History at Griffith University now. When he first came here in 2008, just prior, I think, to Barack Obama getting elected, he explained to us how the primary vote system works in the US. And he's come back every couple of years to update us on what the crazy thing is that the US election is. So we had a debate about October or November prior to the election, after the election, and a number of things factored in. But given what happened after the 2020 election, we thought it might be worth getting his sense of what's going to happen depending on the result of the November election in the US. People that have been to Michael's presentations before will know he's an excellent speaker, knowledgeable about American history and politics, and will be really insightful in terms of what the election results are. So please come along to those events and bring some friends, tell people about them, we'll be letting you know. We're lucky that people are coming along to these events, that they're hearing about the Newcastle Institute. And as, I'm just trying to think who said it, Rob said that Newcastle Institute's the only institute like this in Australia that doesn't take sides.
Gareth Evans.
Gareth Evans, that's right. We had him last year for the co-badged university one. So we really welcome the opportunity for discussion around all the issues and topics, and so we welcome you to come along. And as always, we're always looking for new people to help us on the committee. So please put your hand up if you're welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. I know parking was a bit of a hassle for some people, and we hope to see most of you and some more at the next one as well. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Jason.